This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Patrick Bonifay stepped slowly, hesitantly, toward the takeout window of Trout Auto Parts. It was Friday, January 25th, 1991, a few minutes before midnight. The night was cool for Pensacola, and Patrick wore a jacket and gloves. He felt the weight of a gun in the right pocket of his pants. Daniel Wells, the man he was hired to kill, stood behind Terminal 7 by the window, counting the money in the cash drawer, his last task of the night. Robin Lee Archer had set it up for Patrick, explaining how he was to walk up to the window and ask Wells for a clutch part for an '85 Nissan pickup. Wells would need to go back into the warehouse to get the part, and that's when Patrick would crawl through the parts window. Shoot the man in the head, Robbie told him. Make it look like a robbery. That was the plan. But nothing had gone according to plan Friday night. Inside the car parked outside Trout Auto on W Street were two kids Patrick had recruited to help him, but whom Patrick hardly knew. Eddie Fordham was behind the wheel of the yellow Mustang he was so proud of. Patrick didn't even care much for Eddie. He knew Eddie because their girlfriends were best friends. They went to the same school, Escambia High, but Eddie was one of those rich kids who had a big house in Warrington, while Patrick grew up in a ratty trailer in rough and run-down Brownsville. Eddie was a year older, 18, and had his own car. Patrick didn't even have a driver's license. Patrick needed Eddie because Eddie had wheels. In the back seat was Clifford Barth, a 17-year-old cousin of Patrick's best friend. Cliff was new to Pensacola. He was an Army kid whose father had recently transferred from a base in Alaska. Patrick thought Cliff was all right. Quiet, long-haired, a pothead. Patrick doubted there was ever a time when Cliff wasn't stoned. Cliff carried a little pipe in the front pocket of his shirt. He'd whip it out throughout the day and take a couple of hits. Cliff had been along when Patrick did a couple of jobs. He was there when Patrick broke into a stereo store last December and stole audio equipment they sold for money to buy Christmas presents. When Patrick called the night before and said they could make $20,000 robbing Trout Auto Parts, Cliff said sure. Eddie and Cliff were almost strangers. This was the first time they'd been in the same car together. Patrick had been friends with Cliff for about 5 months. The three boys' friendship was the quick and easy alliance that happens between teenagers who haven't yet formed attachments to a group or clique. They didn't have the mental checklist of qualities, desirable and unacceptable, that goes into adult friendships, or the parental radar that sends out warning signals when a child chooses the wrong kid to play with. It was possible at this age to be friends with a kid you didn't really like. Eddie and Cliff waited in the car, unsure of what was going to happen, while Patrick approached the takeout window. About 9 months ago, Robin Lee Archer had been fired from the store. It was a menial, low-paying job, but it provided Archer with a base from which he could sell pot and cocaine. The takeout window, which stayed open until midnight, wasn't just for selling auto parts after hours. If you came up to that window and asked for the right part, you got a baggie of weed or a packet of coke. Since losing his job at Trout Auto, the 26-year-old Archer had been sleeping on friends' couches and the front seat of his Nissan pickup. He blamed Wells for his firing. He wanted revenge, but he didn't want to exact it himself. He thought Patrick, the 17-year-old stepson of his cousin, might just be desperate enough, with the promise of big money, to kill a man.